Today we're going to be looking at salvaging components. As you see here, I've got a smattering of diodes, relays, MOSFETs, transistors, op amps, logic chips, you name it, the list would be endless. And what I generally do is rip them out of old boards, obviously test them to make sure they work and whatnot. But generally, if you have a power supply or switch mode power supply that's failed, say on a TV, which has a lot of these components on, and say just a fuse has gone or a cap has blown and the TV is now out of service and you've bought a new power supply for it, what you can do is all these other components sitting there doing nothing. Now, what I generally do, as you can see from here, is rip them out, desolder them, reuse them. You never know what you're going to need in the future if you are to do board repairs or electronic repairs. Can cost you a lot of money. For example, this is an IRF transistor, MOSFET, which I think would probably cost you about $3 or thereabouts. 600 volt, say, 1.5 amp rated, comes in very valuable, or can be very valuable to any repairs that you do or any projects that you have. Saves you buying them, take them out of old boards. Diodes in this package, always come in useful. These generally are to sort of along with switch mode power supplies that sort of drive switching the transformers. So these are generally found in high power switch mode power supplies, especially in TVs. But yeah, just a quick one. So always have a look through your circuit boards that you have. You can find all sorts of stuff on them that you could reuse for other projects. Op amps, logic chips, where's it gone? Logic chips for switch mode power controllers, general transistors, MOSFETs, relays, can come in useful for whatever either projects you have or repairs that you may have. Resistors, diodes, all can be reused, all can be tested to make sure they work. Always is a very good idea to salvage components from them old boards that you may have laying around. You never know when you might need them. Build up your parts bin, save you quite a lot of money. So it's always a good idea. So any old circuit boards you have laying about doing nothing, from old TVs or TVs you're going to throw out, or TVs that people have thrown out. And I say TVs because you're most likely to get your high power diodes or diode bridges or bridge rectifiers, and transformers, MOSFETs, could save you a couple of quid for future projects or future repairs. Okay, so I'm going to show you an example of salvaging components. So this is an old ballast I got from work, emergency lighting ballast for fluorescent lights and emergency lighting in commercial areas. Let's have a look, see if there's anything worth salvaging in here. Maybe, maybe not, but as I say, it's a good idea to have a look. Now this one has failed. I've not found the point of failure for this lighting ballast, but at the same time it's not currently being used. There's just no power whatsoever, so we can take it. Some of the components are fried or dead or just come to the end of life. I don't know what you want to call it. So see on here, it's quite a few bits and pieces, not a massive amount, but as you can see, there's some good quality stuff in here. Actually, it doesn't look like it's been used. Interesting. Even better. So we've got some pretty much new-ish components. If not a lot of the stuff has been sort of throttled or been used, then the life expectancy of them are going to be a lot higher. One thing I look for is brands of capacitors. Now, as you can see straight away, there's a Rubicon cap there, so these are going to be Rubicon make capacitors, which, if you didn't know, They're probably one of the best kind of makes of capacitors you can get. Very good lifetime, very good high temperature rating. So yeah, so 470 UF. What's the voltage on that? 25 volts there. What's that one we looked at earlier? That is a 450 UF. No, it's all 450 volt 10 UF or microfarad. 450 volt 2.2 microfarad. Also you've got some filtering, some EMF or EMI filtering, some more filtering, transformer, that's probably a filter as well. We've got, what's that, 33k high wattage resistor. Nice little, what is that? That is, looks like a little relay just at the bottom there. Let me just zoom a little bit. 4.5 volt DC little relay, could be useful. There's a bigger relay there. So things like these, you know, even the connectors you could use. You know, these are what you call push connectors. So you have a copper wire, not the threaded wire. We could use threaded wire. Copper wire strand, and you poke them in, and they automatically lock the cable into the holes provided. And obviously to eject them, you press and pull down there, and it releases the wire. Quite good little connectors those, and again, if you look to buy them, they possibly could be quite expensive. So there's a couple of bits and pieces on there, some resistors, and I say this one was lucky. Doesn't look like it's been used. There's no obvious sign of any physical damage, anything burnt out. So that's good to have a look at. And as I say, this gives you the opportunity to salvage a pretty good, decent amount of components from there. If you're not going to use it, or if it's out of service, as I mentioned before, then why not take the parts off, reuse them for other things, or repairs of other units that you know the point of failure. Say that resistor burnt out, or you know, one of the input capacitors have burnt, or a transformer's gone. Because it's a single, well, it's double-sided, this board, but again, the reason why I like power supplies and thereof is because generally they are through hole, and they are a lot easier to remove components from. I don't do S&D work, I mean, I hate them. So all these components here, if you had a hot air station, you would be able to remove those components and reuse them if you truly wanted. But I generally tend to stick to beefy power supplies, because in general they are through hole components which are reusable, and that's the sort of components I work with. So from my point of view, I like big beefy power supplies because they're through hole. You can easily take the components off, so it's all good. SMD stuff I'm not a big fan of. I don't use SMD. I don't have the tools for SMD, so therefore I don't use them in projects and such. If I was to create a project using SMD components, I would get them pre-manufactured, obviously get the board spun, and then I would get the manufacturer to also place the components onto any boards or prototype boards that I'm looking to order. But any through-hole stuff, always good to play about with, because you know, they're pretty easy, especially if you have like a standard breadboard. You can just plug your components in, test them, do what you like with them. You know, run some LEDs, you know, do a 555 timer circuit. You know, muck about with through-hole stuff is a lot easier in general. With breadboards, you can use surface mount, but you have to get the boards that are adapted. So basically, if you have, for example, a let's have a look, say this chip here, it's probably like 14 pin maybe, or 28 pin chip. You know, you could desolder that if you had the right equipment. You could put it onto a little daughter board, which then plugs into your breadboard. So you can reuse them, but it's a lot of mucking about, I think personally, for especially for testing purposes. You know, there's a lot of mucking about, a lot of fiddling, just to use that component specifically. So I tend to use through hole, because as I say, you can just desolder it from here, get rid of any solder on the bottom of the pins. Sometimes you do have solder left over from them, like that one. Actually, I took the solder off that one, but as you can see, sometimes they have a little bit of solder left on them. So, you know, the only fiddling you're going to be doing is removing the solder, but as soon as you pull them out of wherever you got it from, they're ready to plug into a breadboard, and away you go, you know. So you know, well, that's my take on spare parts, and that's my take on, you know, power supply boards and whatnot. Through hole components, a lot easier to deal with, a lot easier to manage, and I think a lot easier to work with, depending on what you like. So yes, if you do like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Comment down below if you want to see more like this, or if you want to see less like this. Give it a thumbs down if you didn't like it, you know. Any feedback's good. So yeah, until the next time, chill and take it easy. Enjoy. Spot on.